Exactly. But have you ever wondered why? Have you ever wondered why you keep attracting the same partner when you go out dancing? Again and again at different locations. Have you ever wondered why that happens? Well, through the lens of shadow dynamics, this tells us that our external movement patterns are a reflection of our internal movement dynamics. Our polarity, our dominant element, our energetic charge, and our movement signature. The way that we move with others can only really be a reflection of how we move with ourselves. And this is just like a lead dancer who always executes the same turn pattern on everyone he dances with. He'll only really have true harmony with those that understand that pattern. But when we start to perceive movement, the undercurrents of external movement, then we're able to stop forcing patterns and we're able to respond to the energy in front of us. This is actually one of the toughest pills to swallow because, well, this is the empowering part about this whole thing. The empowering part is that if you're continuing to experience the same dynamics over and over again in different scenarios, who's the constant in that equation? You. And this isn't criticism, this is leverage, because once you can see that, then you're able to change the pattern. The whole concept of this is to create the shift, and the shift happens when we change the internal mechanism, right? The polarity, the elemental expression, the charge, right? And when we evolve our internal dynamic, our external dynamics evolve too. In the context of partner dancing, a lot of people think the lead uses force. The lead does not use force. The lead doesn't have to use force. In shadow dynamics, the lead role is not a forceful role, but it can be an energetic architect. That's a subtle difference, right? Because the lead's role is not to overpower. The lead's role is not to impose. The lead's role is to empower. The lead's role is to propose, right? Because any lead that imposes their will, any lead that imposes their will turns the dynamic into an imbalance. This gets into a very interesting topic because the best leads, if you look at the best leads, they have both masculine and feminine qualities about them. Why? Because a good leader actually needs sensitivity. A good leader needs sensitivity so that they can understand the person in front of them. In the context of social dance, partner dance, this is understanding their timing, understanding their capacity, understanding their openness and receptivity. Because that's one of the main questions. How do you know you're a good lead? Well, the easiest way to say it is if your proposals aren't being accepted, your lead is not working. Right? Because a lead is not measured on how much they push, how much force they use. No, that's not what a lead is measured on. An effective and powerful lead is measured on if their initiations are being accepted, because this is the real way to move forward towards any destination. So this is what the lead actually depends on. And the best part that people always miss is that the best leads are also the best follows, right? Because they understand that it's a dynamic. They understand that it's not a one-way street. This is a whole nother thing. Let's talk about the follow role, because most people think the follow role is passive. This couldn't be furthest from the truth. The follow role is not passive. And actually, in shadow dynamics, calling the follow role passive is one of the most damaging misunderstandings there is, because the inherent nature of a dynamic is that it's a shared connection. So that means each participant has their agency and each participant has a power to influence the outcome of that dynamic. And even when people get into the follow role, when they embody the follow role, if they're not comfortable with the follow role, they feel like they're waiting. The follow is not waiting. The follow is responding. And responsiveness is its own type of power. The whole misconception started when people assume that power can only look like one thing, that power only looks like force. But look at water. Look at the ways power is reflected in the element of water. Water's soft, but it can cut rock over time, right? Water can flow, but it can crash. Water can nurture, but it can destroy. So it's not that water doesn't have any power. It's not that water doesn't have force. It's not that the follow roll doesn't have any power. It's that it's a different kind of power that is reflected in receptivity and not resistance. This is the essence of the follow roll. The power and force of the follow roll is when a follow really steps into their responsiveness, their magnetism, their real receptivity. They can influence the entire dynamic even more than the lead. And when we look at that, that's not weakness, that's embodied intelligence. And the truth of it is that this concept that the follow roll is passive, it comes from fear. That comes from fear, the fear of knowing how powerful receptive energy could be. And as a follow, when you understand this, all of your dynamics change. Most people don't mention this, but every dynamic that we find ourselves in is a choice. Even the unconscious ones. Even the unconscious ones. And a lot of the main reasons why dynamics get broken apart is because it wasn't a conscious choice, right? A lot of people think they're choosing what they want, but they're choosing from an impulse. They're choosing from an initial attraction. They're choosing as a reaction to something, right? And this is how incompatibility gets built into the foundation of a dynamic. That's our main thing. In shadow dynamics, we make conscious choices. Real choice is choosing a partner whose polarity complements yours, a partner whose element is compatible with yours, right? A partner whose movement charge and movement signature align to create harmony, not conflict. This is one of the hardest things to accept when it comes to this. When you're in a dynamic, even the difficult ones, part of you chose it. Part of you chose it, or you chose to stay. Even not choosing is a choice. Even not choosing is a choice. And this becomes harder to accept when it comes to traumatic dynamics. It becomes very hard to accept that part of us chose something that was so destructive. But this is not to blame. This is not to blame you. This is about reclaiming our agency within the dynamic. And this all happens when we choose consciously. And when you finally get intentional about who you get into a dynamic with, everything changes. Your relationships gain more attraction, more compatibility, more connection, because your choices are in alignment with who you are. This is how it really is. Most dynamics don't fall apart because of conflict. They fall apart because of imbalances and how we respond to imbalances. What's so important to remember is that a dynamic is always in motion, right? So imbalances happen. It's natural to have them, but what isn't natural is how we respond to them. Most people with imbalances, they go right into react mode, right? What are the three main ways of reaction? Fight, flight, freeze. But all three of these things, all they will accomplish is shift the pendulum to the opposite extreme. If you fight and push hard up against the imbalance, it creates another imbalance. If you run away from the imbalance, it leaves the imbalance unresolved. If you freeze in the imbalance, you get stuck in the dynamic. So you see, all of these things don't help to resolve or create equilibrium with the imbalance, right? So the imbalance doesn't heal, it just mutates. In shadow dynamics, we don't react, we respond. And I always say that. We don't react, we respond, because every reaction has its healthier response. So instead of fighting, we ground the energy, right? Instead of flighting, running away, we center the energy, right? Instead of freezing, we clear the energy. And all of these three responses to those reactions, they make it so that we can bring the dynamic back into equilibrium. Not the extreme points, but the balance point. And this is exactly why intellectual talk-based healing doesn't always work, because wounds are not always in the mind alone, they're in the body. And a lot of the things that can throw a dynamic off, such as fear, mistrust, tension, trauma, these things are not just experienced in the mind, they're expressed also through the body, right? So talking to something that's stored in the muscle doesn't help to release. We need something new. We need a new perspective. We need a new approach that addresses what's being held in the body and how to release it. And this is exactly what shadow dynamics does. This is exactly why movement practices are so effective, because they help you move through different ways that you've been stuck, whether physically, emotionally, mentally, and more. The truth is, words can be misused. Words can be misunderstood. Definitions can get mixed. Two people can say the same sentence and mean completely different things, but movement acts as that universal language, right? Movement is a universal language. The movement doesn't lie. And if you know what to look for, the movement can reveal to you what's actually happening. In shadow dynamics, we don't just analyze the dynamic, we embody the dynamic. When we embody the dynamic, what does this allow us to do? This allows us to do three very important things. It allows us to regulate our nervous system, it allows us to repair imbalances, and it allows us to repattern the whole connection. This is what makes shadow dynamics such a transformational tool. And this is all done through movement, breath, and energetic alignment. And when this is done, this opens the doors for true, genuine, embodied healing. You see, most people confuse attraction with connection. And this is the beginning of where dynamics can go wrong. This is how I describe it. Attraction is the spark, right? It's exciting, it's intoxicating, but it's also deceptive, and it doesn't last long. And this makes sense because initially what we're attracted to is surface level, body type, style, aesthetics, and not the deeper aspects of character, which we call movement signatures. In shadow dynamics, we separate the spark from the flame, right? The spark is the thing that will pull you in, but the flame is the thing that's going to sustain the connection. And when people build a dynamic on the spark alone, they end up in a connection with no foundation. The truth is, the real source of the connection isn't based on how someone looks. It's based more on how someone moves. And your movement signature is the key that's going to tell you who you're naturally going to move in harmony with and who you're naturally going to move in conflict with. So when you base your choices on movement signatures instead of body type, the confusion disappears and the connection becomes real. So what I'm saying is this: attraction matters, but attraction is not the foundation. Attraction is the invitation, right? True connection is built on polarity, compatibility, and how both of the energies meet. And this is what we train in shadow dynamics, how to feel the flame, not just chase the spark. People ask me, what is shadow dynamics? The truth is, most of the time, what controls the dynamics you find yourself in isn't conscious, it's conditioned. Your old wounds, your old narratives, your embodied patterns, these are the hidden forces that are running the dynamic behind the scenes, not your intentions. Shadow dynamics brings all of that to the surface. We reveal the unconscious embodied patterns so you can finally transform them, not through talking, but through movement. What we've realized is that when your body and your internal dynamics change, your external dynamics change with it. That's because movement is a universal language. It exposes what words hide. And if you know what to look for, movement can reveal what's underneath the surface. When you shift your dynamics, when you move differently, Your old patterns can't survive. They can't survive because you're not feeding them anymore. In shadow dynamics, we use what's called the dynamic movement model, which is a transformational embodiment tool that reflects the core mechanisms of a connection: polarity, elemental compatibility, energetic charges, and movement signatures. And when you understand these core mechanisms, you gain the tool to shift any dynamic which is within yourself or in dynamic with another person. This work is deep, it's powerful, and it's transformational because we're not running away from the shadow, we're dancing with it, we're facing it, and we're transcending it. This program transforms couples, it transforms individuals, and it changes anyone deeply who wants to embody a new version of themselves.